They called themselves the Varkrath, a name whispered across star systems with equal parts fear and reverence. To them, the galaxy was not a collection of civilizations. It was a hunting ground. For over 3 millennia, the Varkrath had reigned as the undisputed apex species. Their empire stretched across blackened star maps, each system marked not by diplomacy or trade routes, but by conquest. Entire civilizations had risen, resisted, and fallen beneath their claws. Some had tried to negotiate, others had tried to fight. None had survived. The Varkrath did not believe in coexistence. To them, there were only 2 roles in the universe, predator and prey, and they had never once been the latter. Far beyond the glowing core worlds of their empire, in the dim outer spiral of the galaxy, a war council convened aboard the dread ship Karzul Prime. The vessel itself was a monument to dominance, its surface layered in the bones and alloys of conquered species, its halls echoing with the low growls of its masters. Inside the war chamber, towering Varkrath commanders stood in a circle around a pulsing holographic star map. Their forms were massive, armored in natural plating that shimmered like black steel. Rows of jagged teeth lined their elongated jaws, and their eyes, cold, predatory, burned with intelligence and instinct. At the center of the room stood Warlord Threxion, the oldest and most feared among them. "The last resistance in the Taurian sector has been extinguished," one commander reported, its voice a guttural rumble. "The native species attempted evacuation. We hunted them across 3 systems. None escaped." A low chorus of satisfaction rippled through the chamber. Threxion inclined his head slightly. "As expected." Their kind showed promise, briefly. Another commander stepped forward, claws clicking against the metallic floor. "There is, however, a new development. Our scouts have detected an emerging species in the Orion fringe. They call themselves humans." The word hung in the air for a moment, unfamiliar and unimpressive. Threxion's gaze shifted toward the holographic display as the map zoomed in. A small cluster of systems flickered into view, barely a fraction of the Empire's reach. "Primitive?" he asked. "Relatively," the commander replied. "They possess early interstellar capabilities, crude compared to ours. Their worlds show signs of internal conflict, wars among themselves." A few of the Varkrath chuckled, a harsh, rasping sound. "They fight each other?" one sneered. "Pathetic." "Disorganized prey is the easiest to cull," another added. But the reporting commander did not share their amusement. "There is something unusual," it continued. "Despite their internal divisions, they expand rapidly. Their colonies are resilient. When attacked by native predators on their worlds, they do not retreat. They adapt. They study. They return stronger." Threxion's eyes narrowed slightly, though not with concern, only curiosity. "Adaptation is not unique," he said. "All prey evolves, until it doesn't." The commander hesitated, then continued. "Our scouts observed a minor incident. A Varkrath scouting party, 3 units, made contact with a human outpost on the fringe of their territory. That drew the chamber's attention." "And?" Threxion prompted. "They did not report back." Silence fell. For a moment, the hum of the warship was the only sound. Then, laughter erupted. 3 scouts. One commander scoffed. Perhaps they grew bored and abandoned their post. "Or perhaps this human species got lucky," another said. "Even prey can wound a hunter." Once. Threxion raised a clawed hand, and the noise ceased instantly. "Clarify," he ordered. The reporting commander brought up a visual recording. Grainy footage flickered into existence, chaotic, fragmented. Explosions lit up a darkened landscape. Shapes moved quickly, too quickly to fully track. The Varkrath scouts appeared briefly, their massive forms cutting through structures. And then they were gone. Not defeated in open combat. Not overwhelmed by numbers. Erased. The footage ended abruptly. A low growl rippled through the chamber, but this time it was not amusement. Trickery, one commander muttered. Ambush. Prey hiding in the shadows, another said, disdain returning to its tone. Threxian studied the empty space where the scouts had vanished. His mind, honed by centuries of conquest, processed the data with cold precision. They did not flee, he said quietly. The others turned toward him. They engaged, Threxian continued, and something in that engagement ended them. Impossible, one snapped. No lesser species. Impossible, Threxian interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm, is a word used by the dead. The chamber fell silent once more. For the first time, the name human carried a faint weight. Not fear, not yet, but something else. Interest. Threxian turned back to the star map. The cluster of human-controlled systems glowed faintly against the vast darkness of space. Small, fragile, insignificant. Prey. And yet, dispatch a hunting fleet, he ordered. Limited force. I want this species tested. A commander stepped forward. Shall we begin full-scale invasion? No, Threxian said. Not yet. His gaze remained fixed on the map. Every species believes itself strong, until it meets us. Let them believe it a little longer. A slow, predatory smile spread across his jaws. We will observe. We will study. And then... His claws curled slightly, as if already grasping something unseen. We will hunt. Far away, on a quiet human colony world orbiting a dim star, alarms had not yet begun to sound. No one looked to the skies in fear. No one knew what was coming, because for the first time in their long, brutal history, the Varkrath had found something they did not fully understand, and they intended to prove, as they always had, that in this galaxy there was only one true predator: fire. The human colony of Irinda, 7, was not meant to be important. It orbited a dim, aging star on the far edge of explored space, a place chosen not for glory, but for survival. Its settlers were engineers, farmers, ex-soldiers, and families seeking distance from the crowded core worlds. Their cities were modest, their defenses minimal, their technology practical, not powerful. To the Varkrath, it was perfect, a hunting ground. The fleet arrived without ceremony. No grand declaration, no warning. One moment, the skies above Irinda 7 were quiet, streaked only by the soft glow of orbital transports. The next, space itself seemed to tear open as massive, black warships slipped into orbit, silent, predatory shapes blotting out the stars. Within minutes, the colony's communication arrays lit up in chaos. Unknown vessels entering atmosphere, multiple signatures, energy readings off the charts. This isn't mining or trade. Get command on the line. Now! Sirens wailed across the surface, echoing through the steel corridors of settlements and the open plains of hydrofarms. Civilians scrambled. Defense crews rushed to stations that had not been used in years. Governor Elias Vaughn stood in the central command hub, staring at the live feed from orbit. His face tightened as the scale of the ships became clear. "Those aren't raiders," he muttered. "No, sir," his operations officer replied, voice tense. There's something else. The first strike came fast. Dropped vessels pierced the atmosphere like falling spears, trailing fire across the sky. They hit the outskirts of the colony in coordinated waves, each impact shaking the ground like thunder. From the smoke emerged the Varkrath, towering, armored, unstoppable. They moved with terrifying precision, cutting through structures, tearing apart defensive turrets, advancing without hesitation. Their weapons were brutal and efficient, reducing anything in their path to ruin. Human resistance met them head-on, and broke. Rifles fired. Explosives detonated. Defense drones swarmed. For a brief moment, it looked like a fight. Then the Varkrath pushed forward. Fall back. Fall back to Sector 3. A human commander shouted over comms, his voice strained. Lines collapsed. Positions were abandoned. Civilians were evacuated deeper into the colony's interior. To the Varkrath, it was exactly as expected. Prey, running. From high above, aboard the command vessel, Warlord Threxian watched the battle unfold. They retreat quickly, one of his lieutenants observed. Minimal resistance. As predicted. Threxian said nothing. His eyes followed the movement patterns on the tactical display. Human units pulling back in seemingly disorganized waves, abandoning territory with little hesitation. But something about it. Continue pressure, he ordered. Drive them inward. Do not allow regrouping. On the ground, the humans ran. Through narrow corridors. Across open terrain. Into the deeper sections of the colony. But they were not fleeing blindly. Team Alpha, in position. Bravo ready. Charges set. Awaiting trigger. Governor Vaughn stood beside a group of military coordinators in a reinforced bunker. His expression was calm now, focused. Civilians, he asked. Evacuated beyond the inner ring, someone replied. Good, Vaughn said. He took a breath. Then we begin. The Varkrath advanced into the colony's central district. Their movements slowed slightly as the environment changed, structures tighter, pathways narrower. Their thermal scans showed scattered human signatures ahead, still retreating. Weak. Cornered. Perfect. Close the distance, a Varkrath commander growled. End this. They moved forward, step by step, deeper, and then the world exploded. A chain of detonations ripped through the district, tearing apart entire streets in an instant. Shockwaves slammed into the Varkrath ranks, collapsing buildings around them, isolating units from one another. Before the dust could settle, gunfire erupted. Not scattered, coordinated, precise. From above, below, and every shadow in between, human forces struck. Hidden turrets unfolded from the walls. Snipers fired from concealed vantage points. Drones swarmed in tight formations, targeting weak points in Varkrath armor. Ambush! One of the alien commanders roared. But it was too late. The hunters had walked into the trap. From orbit, the tactical display flickered violently. Varkrath units, gone. Entire squads, cut off, overwhelmed, erased from the map. The chamber aboard the command ship fell into stunned silence. That, one lieutenant began, uncertain, was not expected. Threxian leaned forward slightly, his gaze locked on the shifting battlefield. For the first time in centuries, something unfamiliar crept into his thoughts. Not fear, not yet, but recognition. These humans, he said slowly, do not behave like prey. Below, on Irinda 7, the battle had changed. The retreat had ended, and the hunt had just begun. Fire. The Varkrath had never known confusion in battle. War, to them, was instinct, movement, precision, a perfect balance between brutality and control. Every campaign followed a familiar rhythm: identify the prey, apply pressure, break resistance, eliminate survivors. But Irinda, 7 did not follow that rhythm. It shattered it. "What are they doing?" The question came from one of Threxian's senior lieutenants, its voice laced with something dangerously close to unease. On the tactical display, the battlefield was no longer a clean advance. It was chaos. Varkrath units scattered, isolated, vanishing one by one in sectors that had already been secured. "They're everywhere," another muttered. "And nowhere." Threxian said nothing. His eyes tracked the data with cold focus, but the pattern, if there was one, refused to reveal itself. "This is not random," he said at last. "They are guiding us." On the surface, the Varkrath adapted the only way they knew how. They tightened formations. They increased sensor sweeps. They advanced with heavier force. And still, they were hunted. A squad of Varkrath elites moved through the shattered remains of a collapsed industrial zone. Their armor was scarred, their movements sharper now, more cautious. "Thermal scans," their leader growled. "Negative. No life signs detected." Silence. Too much silence. The wind carried ash through broken structures. Metal groaned. Shadows stretched long across the ruins. Then, a sound. Soft. Behind them. The squad turned as one. Too late. The ground beneath their rear unit detonated, launching one of them into the air in a burst of fire and debris. Before it even hit the ground, precise gunfire cut through the smoke, striking joints, weak points, exposed gaps. "Contact!" the leader roared. But the attackers were already gone. Only echoes remained. "They strike and vanish," one Varkrath commander reported. "They do not hold ground. They do not defend positions." "Because they are not defending," Threxian said quietly. All eyes turned to him. "They are studying." The realization spread slowly, and then all at once. Every engagement, every ambush, every loss. The humans were learning. "They target the same structural points repeatedly," a lieutenant said, bringing up combat data. "Joint connections, sensory clusters, neural access points. That knowledge is not instinct," another added. "It is acquired." Threxian's claws flexed slightly. "How long?" he asked. The lieutenant hesitated. "Based on engagement logs, hours." Silence. Even among the Varkrath, that was wrong. No species adapted that fast. No prey learned its predator in a single battle. On the ground, human command units monitored the same data. "They're adjusting their patrol formations," one officer said. "Tighter groups. Overlapping fields." "Good," another replied. "That makes them predictable." Governor Vaughn stood behind them, watching the projections. "Phase 2, he asked. A nod. Already in motion. The next wave of attacks came not from the shadows, but from the sky. Human strike craft, small, fast, and agile, dropped into contested zones with surgical precision. They didn't engage in prolonged combat. They hit hard, targeted key units, and pulled back before retaliation could land. Simultaneously, ground teams shifted tactics again. No longer just ambushes. Now, coordinated hunts. Varkrath squads found themselves tracked, herded, pushed into kill zones where human forces waited with overwhelming firepower. Unit 7 has been lost. Unit 12, no response. Unit 14 is requesting immediate extraction. The signal cut. For the first time in recorded history, Varkrath units began to hesitate. "They are isolating us," a commander growled. "Dividing our strength." "Then regroup," another snapped. "Consolidate forces. Crush them with mass." Threxian raised a hand. "No." The chamber froze. "If we gather, we become a single target," he said. "They want us to react, to follow patterns." His gaze hardened. "They are turning our instincts against us." On the battlefield below, a lone Varkrath warrior moved through the ruins, separated from its unit. Its breathing was heavy now, controlled but strained. Its sensors flickered, interference, deliberate and precise. For the first time in its existence, it felt something unfamiliar. Uncertainty. Then, a voice crackled through the comms. "Human, come. You're not the hunter anymore." The Varkrath spun, and the shadows moved. Back aboard the command ship, the reports kept coming. Losses, disruptions, failures. Not catastrophic. Not yet. But impossible to ignore. Threxian stared at the star map, at the small cluster of human-controlled systems that now seemed different. Not weak, not insignificant, but dangerous. "These humans," he said slowly, his voice low and deliberate, "learn too quickly." No one spoke, because for the first time the thought had taken root, not in words, but in instinct. The hunt had changed. Fire. The Varkrath had always believed fear was a weakness reserved for lesser species. It clouded judgment, slowed reaction, broke unity. It was the final stage before extinction. And yet, it was spreading. "Sector 9 has gone dark." The report echoed through the war chamber aboard Karzul Prime, cutting through the low hum of systems and the tension that now filled the air. "Define dark," Threxian said, his voice steady. "No signals. No movement. No survivors." A pause. Not even debris. That last detail lingered. Varkrath units did not simply vanish. They fought. They fell. They left ruin behind them. But this was absence. On the surface of Irinda 7, the battlefield had transformed. What was once a contested war zone had become something far more dangerous. A hunting ground. But not for the Varkrath. A Varkrath assault group moved cautiously through a canyon of broken structures, what had once been a dense residential sector. Their formation was tighter than ever, weapons raised, sensors sweeping constantly. "Maintain visual contact," their leader ordered. "No separation." "Yes, Commander." Every step was measured. Every shadow watched. High above, unseen, human reconnaissance drones tracked their movement in real time. "Target group confirmed," a human operator said. 8 units. Heavy class. "Route them to Corridor Delta," another replied. "Copy." The trap began with silence. Then, a distant explosion. The Varkrath turned instinctively toward the sound. A mistake. Moments later, controlled detonations sealed off their rear path, collapsing entire structures into a wall of debris. Before they could reposition, the ground beneath them shifted. Hidden charges detonating in sequence, forcing them forward into a narrow passage. "Ambush pattern," the commander roared. "Break through." But there was nowhere to go. From above, automated turrets unfolded. From the sides, concealed panels opened, and from the darkness ahead, humans stepped into view, not retreating, not hiding, waiting. The first volley hit with devastating precision. Focused fire struck joints, vision clusters, exposed connective tissue, every weakness the Varkrath had spent centuries ensuring no enemy could exploit. But the humans already knew them too well. "Return fire!" the Varkrath commander bellowed. Energy blasts tore through the corridor, destroying cover, shattering structures. But the humans didn't hold position. They moved. Fluid, coordinated, unpredictable. One moment in sight, the next gone. "They're inside our range," one Varkrath snarled. "No," the commander corrected, a growl rising in his throat. "We're inside theirs." One by one, the Varkrath fell. Not overwhelmed, not overpowered, outmaneuvered. From orbit, the tactical display told the same story. Entire zones once marked as Varkrath-controlled now flickered uncertainly, human presence spreading like a slow, inevitable tide. "They're reclaiming territory," a lieutenant said, disbelief creeping into its voice. "No," another corrected quietly. "They're taking control." Threxian watched in silence. Every report, every loss, every shift in the battle. The pattern was clear now. The humans were no longer reacting. They were dictating. "Warlord," one of his commanders began, hesitant, "we should consider full deployment. Overwhelming force. Erase the colony entirely." Threxian did not respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the display, on the movement of human units, on the way they anticipated, adapted, countered. "If we escalate blindly," he said at last, "we play into their strategy." The chamber fell still. "They want us to commit everything, to act without precision." His claws tightened. That is how prey survives, by forcing the predator into error. On the surface, a lone Varkrath warrior stumbled through the ruins, separated, damaged. Its armor was fractured, one of its limbs dragging slightly behind. Its breathing was heavier now, slower. For the first time in its life, it felt hunted. A faint sound echoed behind it. Footsteps. Measured. Deliberate. The Varkrath turned sharply, weapon raised, and saw them. 3 humans. Standing in the open. Watching. They didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. Didn't fear. "You learn fast," one of them said, voice steady through the comm channel. The Varkrath snarled, raising its weapon. But it already knew. Too late. Back aboard Karzul Prime, the final report came in. Assault Group Delta. Eliminated. Silence followed. Heavy. Unavoidable. For the first time in thousands of years, the Varkrath were not advancing. They were losing ground. Threxian finally spoke, his voice lower than before, quieter but far more dangerous. "This species," he paused, not searching for words, choosing them carefully, "does not fear us." No one answered, because they all understood what that meant. Across the battlefield of Irinda 7, the shift was complete. The Varkrath were no longer the hunters. They were targets, tracked, studied, eliminated, and somewhere in the darkness of the ruined colony, human forces moved with purpose, relentless, patient, precise. The galaxy's greatest predators had entered the hunt expecting dominance. Instead, they had stepped into something far worse. They had become the prey. Fire, The silence aboard Karzul Prime was no longer the silence of control. It was the silence of realization. Remaining ground forces have dropped below 40%, a lieutenant reported, voice tight. Orbital superiority remains intact, but surface dominance is compromised. Compromised. The word tasted wrong. The Varkrath did not compromise. They conquered. Yet the data did not lie. Threxian stood motionless before the star map, claws resting lightly against the console. The human colony, once insignificant, now pulsed with activity, its defensive grid expanding, its forces reorganizing with unsettling efficiency. "They're not slowing down," another commander said. "Even after sustained engagement, their operational tempo is increasing." "They should be exhausted," one added. "Any prey species would be." "They are not prey," Threxian said. The chamber fell silent. Again. On the surface of Irinda 7, the war had reached its final phase. But it did not feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. Forward units in position. Strike teams ready. Orbital windows confirmed. This is our moment. Governor Vaughn stood at the center of human command, surrounded by tactical projections. His eyes moved across the battlefield, every movement precise, every decision calculated. "Execute," he said. The sky lit up. Human strike craft surged upward from hidden launch points across the colony, punching through the atmosphere in coordinated waves. They didn't challenge the Varkrath fleet head-on. They didn't need to. Instead, they targeted specific ships, specific systems, weapons arrays, communication relays, command nodes. Every strike was deliberate, every hit crippling. "They're targeting our coordination," a Varkrath lieutenant growled. "Disrupting command flow." "Because they know it is our strength," Threxian replied. His gaze remained fixed on the display. "They have learned us." Below, human ground forces advanced. Not recklessly, not blindly, with purpose. The same corridors that had once been battlegrounds were now pathways of control. Varkrath units attempting to regroup were intercepted, divided, and eliminated before they could consolidate. There were no wasted movements, no hesitation, only progress. A final transmission broke through the command channel. "Warlord, this is Commander Razek of Ground Division." Static, heavy breathing. "We are surrounded." Threxian's eyes narrowed. "Hold your position. Reinforcements." "They're not attacking like before," Razek interrupted. "They're controlling the field. Every route is blocked. Every escape." A sharp burst of sound. Then silence. No one spoke, because no one needed to. "They are closing the net," a lieutenant said quietly. For the first time in recorded Varkrath history, a retreat was considered. "Warlord," one of the senior commanders said carefully, "we can still preserve the fleet. Withdraw. Regroup. Return with full force." The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Retreat. The word had no place in their doctrine. But neither did this situation. Threxian remained still for a long moment. Then, "Signal all remaining units," he said. The chamber tensed. "Prepare for orbital withdrawal." Shock rippled through the commanders. "We retreat?" one asked, disbelief cutting through its voice. Threxian turned slowly, his gaze cold and unyielding. "We do not retreat," he said. "We survive." On the surface, human forces paused only briefly as Varkrath ships began to pull back from orbit. "They're leaving," one officer confirmed. Governor Varn watched the rising ships streak across the sky. "No," he said quietly. "They're learning." Moments later, a final transmission was broadcast across all frequencies. "Clear. Come. Human. This is Governor Elias Varn of Irinda, 7. The signal reached the withdrawing fleet, reached Threxion, reached every Varkrath still alive. "You came here as hunters." A pause. "But you never understood your prey." Threxion listened, unmoving. "Humans don't just survive," Varn continued. "We adapt. We endure. And when we're pushed—" Another pause. "Softer. More dangerous. We push back harder." The transmission ended. But its weight lingered. The Varkrath fleet vanished into the void, leaving behind a world they had failed to claim. A world that had changed everything. In the days that followed, the story spread. From system to system, species to species. A single truth carried across the stars. The Varkrath, apex predators of the galaxy, had been stopped, driven back, outmatched. And humanity? They were no longer an unknown, no longer insignificant, no longer prey. They were something new, something dangerous, something the galaxy had never seen before. As Threxion stood alone in the dim light of his command chamber, staring out into the endless dark, a thought settled into his mind, heavy, undeniable. For the first time in his long existence, he had encountered a species that could challenge them, not through strength alone, but through something far more dangerous: understanding. His claws tightened slightly as the stars stretched into lines before him. "This is not over," he murmured. But deep within, beneath layers of instinct and pride, he knew the hunt had changed forever, because the galaxy no longer belonged to a single predator, and humanity had just taken its place at the top. Fire,